I had my baby girl exactly 1 week ago, so here is my birth story at 40 plus 6, and I had a successful VBAC. So around 40 weeks, one day, I started having Braxton Hicks. They were lasting about 30 seconds. They were painful but manageable. The next day, 40 plus 2, around 2 p.m., I started having real contractions. They were super strong, more painful, but still only about 30 to 40 seconds long. The next day, 40 plus 3, contractions started lasting all night. They fizzled a bit in the morning. At night, they became super strong and closer together, so I went to get checked to see if I was dilated. Upon arrival, they became super close together, but I was still only 2 centimeters, so they sent me home with some medicine to help me sleep. The next day, 40 plus 4, I lost my mucus plug. My contractions started back up that morning after the meds wore off, but they weren't close enough together, so I started using my TENS machine, and I did the Mcneil circuit. The next day, 40 plus 5, my contractions became pretty unbearable. Every 10 minutes, about 40 seconds long. At this point, I was on day 3 of very little sleep and I could barely eat. So I was losing any and all energy that I had left. I told Jude I didn't want to go to the hospital in fear of being sent home again, but he forced me to go because I was in so much pain. When we got there, I was 3 centimeters. They told me to go for a walk for 2 to 4 hours to get things going. If I'm being honest, I had excruciating pelvic pain and could barely take a step without shooting pain, so I walked for about an hour before giving up. They did, however, check me again, and I was at 4, so they admitted me. Once I was finally admitted, they took me to my room, put the IV in, and they asked to break my water to help get her lower and speed things up, which I agreed to. I did have it in my birth plan that I didn't want ARM, which is assisted rupture of membranes. However, I agreed to it. I pretty much just trusted in the OBs and the team because they all seemed very VBAC friendly and were really pushing for me to get my VBAC. I labored with the peanut ball for a few hours until I was about 6, and then they gave me the epidural. However, it didn't fully work. I experienced something similar when I had my son, which turned into an emergency C-section, but for some reason my body does not take to the epidural very well, and it was super patchy, so I could still feel all of the pain in my pelvis and upper thighs. I just couldn't feel anything in my stomach anymore. I continued to labor with the peanut ball all night, and then at 7 a.m., which was 40 plus 6, the nurse shift change happened, and my new nurse told me that she was going to do everything that she could to figure out why my epidural wasn't working for me. I continued to have my doula put pressure on my back while Jude controlled the TENS machine until then. They ended up giving me lidocaine around 8 a.m., which was a last resort before I began pushing. They offered this or they could redo the epidural, but I was not down for them having to redo the epidural. Thankfully, it took. They checked me one more time. I was 10 centimeters dilated. A nurse came in around 10:30 and they wanted me to try 3 practice pushes, which turned into real pushes. And at 11:09, my baby girl was born, successful VBAC. This was such a positive and healing experience compared to my first birth, and I'm so incredibly grateful for everyone who got me there.